Hi, my name is Ozzy Garcia. I'm a local artist and I'm displaying my art at It's a Grind Coffee, a great place to have a great cup of coffee. And I'm an artist, I paint, and we call ourselves the Burrito Breakfast Clubs because we go out to the parks and we minister to people. Part of the money that comes in from the art goes to feed the homeless. So if you're interested in some of the art, I can be reached at 909-730-3242. That's 909-730-3242. Enjoy my art.
Hello, my name is Manny, and we are at It's a Grind Coffee House, and it's such a pleasure to be able to come to your living room and share some truths of what God has done in our lives, how He has changed us through personal crises that we have faced. So thank you very much for this time. I'm pretty sure that it's going to impact your life one way or the other. Nobody in this world can say that they are exempt from crisis. Crises, unfortunately, are needed in our lives for our spiritual, emotional, and spiritual strength. So we want to thank you very much for letting us come into your life and sharing what God has done in our lives. If we read in Matthew 9:37, where it says, "Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. Pray therefore to the Lord of the harvest that he will send laborers to his harvest." If you notice in the scriptures here, it says his harvest. So that means it is God's harvest. The harvest is the world. We are the seed. In Christ, of course, He is the sower. Christ, He wants to do three things in our lives. He's looking for people to send out to the harvest. People are willing to go out and make a difference in other people's lives through their personal testimony. People to identify with the lost. See, Moses, an incredible man of God, he was sent to go back to rescue his people from the strong arm of Pharaoh. He did it basically, of course, he did it through the voice of God. When he declared to let my people go, of course, that was the voice of God. But he identified with their pain. He identified with their crisis. At the same time, we are called to carry each other's burdens. We're not called to carry our burdens by ourselves, but we are called to carry each other's burdens. We can see in Exodus, that was the first commission. In the first commission, we saw, of course, the Egyptians going out and establishing new communities, new clans, new cultures. They crossed barriers. They fought the giants. That was the first commission. The second one, of course, is the Great Commission. That is when Christ commissioned his disciples to go into all the nations, to baptize, and to heal, and to set them free. If we see in John 1 actually says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and Jesus, He Himself became incarnate." In other words, God became man with the intention that He might identify with what we're going through. So this way, God has a story to tell, which is His story, the story of God. And lastly, of course, we see that Paul, he became weak to the weak. He became a Jew to the Jew with the intention that he may save all men. There's sometimes that we have to humble ourselves, or should I say eat a little bit of the humble pie, and to say we need to be weak to the weak. Mourn with those who mourn and cry with those who cry. So this way we can identify with other people's hurts and feelings. I remember just about a few years back, I was in Paraguay for about 2 weeks. I saw actually salvation right before my eyes for about 2,500 people. On the very last day, when everybody was going home, getting on the bus, there was a young girl. As I look back, she had these very teary eyes. And God had told me, go back and minister to her. And I said, okay, Lord, I will go back. And when I went back and I saw her eyes, God told me to tell her basically that I heard you when you said, God help me. But amazingly enough, I said that 3 times. God help me, God help me, God help me. That was only because while she was being raped, she was crying out to God, God help me. And that just to let you know that Christ, he identifies with our hurts and our pains. Christ has not forgot about you. On the contrary, he is there for you. So to finish things off in my introduction, I'd like to introduce to you the co-host of this program. If she please would tell her your name.
Thank you, Manny. My name is Heather, and I'm just excited to be here. I feel like this ministry that we're doing here, by bringing these stories to you at home, are just going to be a great influence to everyone in the community. I feel like if we can be open and honest about what's going on in our lives and not hide our feelings and our thoughts, then we'll be able to help other people as well. And we all know that we can't get through things alone in life. We need God first, and then we also need to be able to work with the others and fellowship with each other and learn from everyone's own life too.
Well, here we have Sarah Sagoon. Sarah is a close friend, and she has some things to share in her heart of what she has gone through in the last few years, but at the same time, how God has encouraged her, how God has lifted her up, how God has done great and mighty things. God, during her crisis, God just put things together and brought people to her and showed her through Scripture how He loves her, how He's with her all the time. So let me introduce to you Sarah Sagoon.
Hi, my name is Sarah Sagoon. I'm a teacher at Rancho Cucamonga High School and a mother of 3 children, a daughter who's 17 and a son that's 14 and a son that's 11. And I don't know what you want. What do you want to hear? Thank you.
I have a few questions that I would like to ask you, Sarah. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? For instance, where did you grow up and when did you move to California?
I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, and I came to California. I was actually recruited to teach out here, and I taught in Rialto for 5 years, and then I've been at Rancho Cucamonga High School for the last 18 years. And I met my husband while I was teaching out here, and have lived here ever since. So.
Thank you. So you are a teacher. My question is what has been some of the greatest joys that you get from teaching?
I love teaching, and my husband used to always joke that I'm one of the few people that really enjoys teaching, that loves my job. I love having the connection with the kids. I love to see the aha moment. I love to have the kids come back and say, you made a difference in my life now. That's really a special thing because I get to have that effect on people that are going to become the leaders of our country and the leaders of our world. And so that's just a real ministry to me, even though I work in the public sector.
I think that's great just to have teachers like you, especially in the public schools, and where you can, be a positive impact for those kids. So thank you. What is something maybe that you have learned from your students?
I think the thing that I've learned most is obviously patience. I think every teacher learns patience when they're dealing with children. But I've also learned that sometimes there's other things that are more important than what's happening at that moment. And so, there's times where I've thought, no, we have to get through this lesson, but then something will happen and I realize there's a hurting child, and then that becomes more important than maybe the lesson at that point.
Now, Sarah, we're going to move on to something that happened earlier this year. If you can tell us a little bit about it. Can you tell us about your husband?
I met my husband, Jose, about, 22 years ago. We met through a Bible study, and we got married in December of 1989. And in March of this year, my husband passed away of a heart attack. And so we've lost him. And that's been hard. Do you want me to expand on that at all, or?
I remember that day, Sarah. Actually, I got a text message from Jose, and I was actually in here inside this coffee shop at that time. And I saw the text message, and it said Jose, and I said, well, Jose can wait. So then after that, you gave me a call. No, I read the message, and then it said, Jose died of a heart attack, and I could not believe it. Literally, my jaw just dropped. And right away, of course, I gave you a call and said, Sarah, you are joking with me. But unfortunately, this is a crisis that not everybody is prepared for, because obviously we don't have a manual that says Death 101 or how to die, when to die, and why not to die. Basically, we have to be prepared at all times. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And Manny has known us our entire married life. In fact, Manny stood up for Jose at our wedding. And so the text that he got was actually from me. I was going through Jose's cell phone and informing his friends what had happened. And no, we were not prepared at all. My husband was 46 years old. He had just turned 46. And so we had no will. And I knew none of the passwords for any of the computer stuff or my husband did the finances. He liked to do that. And so I was not prepared in any way. And I was having a hard time understanding why this happened. He would always tell me, the interesting thing is that my husband had recently really started eating more healthy. He was very upset with me that I was feeding our children junk food. We had gym memberships, but we also bought a treadmill, and he was doing 2.5 to 3 miles 3 to 5 times a week. He had recently lost 20 pounds, and he did that because his father had a stroke in October. So he said, there's no way that I'm going to be an invalid and I am going to live to see my children and my grandchildren. And he was so sure that he was going to be living such a long time. And I remember even saying to him one time, Jose, only God knows your days. And I'm not saying that you should be unhealthy, but you don't have to be so obsessed with it but because God is going to take you when he needs you. And it was quite, I guess, a foretelling of, but I didn't realize that at the time. And then the next day, my brother-in-law told me that my father-in-law, who was in Mexico at the time, had actually passed away an hour after my husband. So, and my husband was named after him. So he and his dad died the same day, and they both died of heart attacks. And after he told me that, I actually had a little peace because I felt like that was the reason that my husband had to leave. Someone had to go with their dad, and then my husband was chosen. So, and we were actually, out of all the brothers, we were the ones still married. So we had 2 parents, and so there was a parent to leave with the children. So maybe that's another reason that my husband was chosen. There's 5 boys, so he has 4 brothers. So.
Wow, it's quite the story about Jose and his dad passing away on the same day for the same reason as well. I think that just shows that God does have plans, and we just have to believe that that he knows what's going to happen at all times. That's amazing. You did mention some of the things that have been hard since Jose's death. What are some things that you have had to kind of change now that you're a widow and now that Jose is not with you, other than memorizing passwords? And I know you told me a story earlier about the car situation. Maybe that's something that you would like to mention too.
Well, a lot of things have changed. I actually created a will for myself now so that my children will be taken care of. And I've also bought life insurance for myself. But some of the other things, I found out that all the cars were in my husband's name. So technically, I had no control over them. I couldn't sell them. I couldn't do anything with them. And by law in California, you have to wait 40 days before you can do anything with them. And so I was concerned that the creditors would try and get the cars, and then I would lose that money. But God seemed to provide once again, and I did not get the death certificates until actually the 40th day. And so I was able to go and change all the cars to my name. And so that was nice. The creditors had no control of getting those, and I was able to actually sell some of the vehicles and purchase 2 used vehicles, which is nice. We had just purchased a car for my daughter to use, and we had given it to her at Christmas, and that loan was only in my husband's name. And so I tried to get that loan put into my name, and they refused to do it. They wouldn't do it, and I tried to offer to pay the entire car off, but I needed the title to be put in my name, and they refused to do it. So they did repossess that car, and but I think in the scheme of things, God has shown his sovereignty every time, because the amount of money I would have spent to buy that car was basically the same amount of money that I spent for the 2 vehicles that I have now, and I have no car payment. And so that's a real blessing. And even though it hurt at the time and it felt like they were being so mean, God had a plan, and he keeps showing me that he has a plan, and that it may not look the way I think it should look, but he's there and he's taking care of me, because it's such a relief. That was a lot of money to spend, and I would have only had 1 vehicle, and now I have 2 instead of 1, which is really nice. So one of the vehicles was a motorcycle, and I actually still have the motorcycle. My dad actually gave me the money for the motorcycle. So in a sense it's his, but it's still in my name. But he wanted to do that because my dad does ride motorcycles, and Jose had promised all the children rides on the motorcycle, but didn't have a chance to do that before he passed away. So my dad is going to keep that promise to my children and give them rides on that motorcycle. So that's kind of a special thing. The other thing that I'm going through is I am having to sell the house. I'm having to short sale the house. So we are going to be moving in the near future. But once again, God's shown his sovereignty in that. I've looked at houses, I was always like a day late I was always the second offer, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I finally saw a house, and it's in pristine condition. It looks so fabulous. And I'm the first person, so I'm like, oh, should I make an offer? I'm not sure. And that night, Air One called me. I've never been called by Air One before. I do support Air One, but they called me, and one of the pastors asked me, he said, we're just calling to see if there's any prayer requests. And I said, wow. I said, this is amazing. So I told him my story, and I said, it's just amazing that the day I see a house that seems to be the right house for us, you call and ask if you can pray for anything. So I have made an offer, and my offer's been accepted, and now we're waiting for the bank to approve everything. So that's moving. It's funny though, because I was so excited about my offer being accepted, but then I went back, I walked into my house now, and the realization of having to leave that house hit me, that I was actually going to leave the house. So you get the excitement, and then you get the reality checks, and that happens a lot.
You know, something really amazing is I noticed during that process, or during your crisis, how God just really provided for you in every means possible. Of course, my gracious mother made some enchiladas for your family of 60 people, and she made probably 200 enchiladas, which is really good. And with that, I'm just saying God's provision was just enormous in your life during that time. It's like he just carried you and walked with you during that time. And with that being said, there is benefits and there are fruits for serving God. There are fruits for seeking God on a regular basis, because what you do in secret, He's going to reward you in public. He will reward you out in the open. So obviously you have served God for the most of your life, and I can just see how God has protected you because of that, because how you have served Him. So I just really was at awe, just standing back and saying, wow, God gave her the enchiladas that she needed. God also send people her direction to provide gift cards or whatever it is. So it was just amazing, just standing back and watching the hand of God over your life and also over your children's life at the same time.
I agree with Manny. I believe that a lot of times the doors are closed on us and we don't understand why. And then maybe after a few days, a week, or a month, or even longer, sometimes then God reveals why those doors were closed, because he has greater things for us. I wanted to ask you, I know it's important, especially for widows, just to, use their time and talents to serve others, even when even when you're needing to be served yourself. Have you found certain things that you enjoy doing now? Like, for instance, what are ways that you enjoy serving others right now?
Right now, I serve on the worship team at my church, and I have found that I've been trying to go to Bible study more, but I think right now I'm still figuring out how to be the parent, the only parent to all three of my children at the same time, and balance that and still take care of myself. So I haven't quite figured it all out, but it's another, I guess, sovereign thing with God. I mean, our school last year, there were 4 women or 5 women at our school that lost their husbands last year. And one of the science teachers lost her mother in a very freak accident. Her mom was, a van backed out and tipped over and it fell on her mom. I mean, it was incredible. And so I was able to go to this fellow teacher, and I shared with her some of the books that really helped me, and just was there for her. And I've been able to help one of the secretaries who lost her husband. I've been talking with her and giving her some advice from my perspective of what's happened, and that's been nice. It's nice. I remember saying, I finally get to help someone else. I finally get to help other people. I remember saying that to you, Manny. And because people kept saying, are you sure? And I said, no, it's finally my turn to help someone else. Everyone's been helping me, and now I finally get to help someone else. And that means a lot to me that I get to do that. So, yeah, I mean, God's really used it a lot of ways.
I can see your heart in wanting to help others now. I can just see it when you talk about it, and your eyes get teary, and I can just tell that you have such a tender heart for helping other people, even after what you've been through. You mentioned that you recommended some books to some friends. What have been some of your favorite books during this time, or favorite scriptures?
Well, let me start with this. The book within the week of my husband passing away, my parents saw an interview on Good Morning America, and the interview was of the Burpo family. And the Burpo family had their son, when he was 3, had acute appendicitis. In fact, his appendix had leaked, and he had been having the poison in his body for 5 days and was rushed into surgery. And he was close to death, and he was saved. But later on, they found out that he started saying stuff, and they realized that he had gone to heaven. And they've written a book about their experience. And so I saw that interview, and so I got the book, and I read the book in 2 days. It's called Heaven is for Real. It's a very good book. And then I gave it to my daughter, and she read it in 2 days. It was really comforting because, I mean, he was 3. There's no way he could have made this up. And it just made me feel so much better about where my husband is, and what he's maybe experiencing. And so that was comforting. And my children have been really amazing. I mean, I try and ask them a lot how they're feeling. And my boys I remember asking my 11-year-old once, are you really sad about Daddy? And he said, no. And I said, you're not? And he said, no. And I go, why not? And he says, he's in a really great place, and he's having a lot of fun, Mom. And I thought, oh my gosh. I said, you're amazing. I mean, they've lifted me up a lot. And even my 14-year-old, I've said, how are you doing? And he goes, Mom, I don't need to fall apart. I know where Dad is, and I know I'm going to see him again someday. So I don't need to fall apart. I miss him. He just made the JV soccer team, and he told me it was hard to not be able to tell Dad that he made the JV soccer team. So maybe my daughter's probably having the hardest time, but she's been doing devotions and stuff. But probably the devotion that really, really spoke to me, there was I've been doing this a book of prayer by Stormy O'Marty, and I've been doing that as daily devotions for a while. And this was the devotion the day after my husband passed away. It said, Lord, I thank you that you love me so much that you want to totally restore, repair, rebuild, renew, and redeem my soul and my life. I know that no matter what damage has occurred in my life or what loss I have experienced, there is nothing so great that you cannot redeem and restore in some way. And what an amazing, that just was amazing. And then the following day, the words of the scripture that I was to read, and I read this in bed, said, Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. And so I just really felt like that was God's way of telling me that I had work to do still, and I needed to get up, and he was going to restore my life.
Thank you so much for sharing what God has done in your life, and I'm pretty sure what you have spoken has touched other people's lives. Once again, just to let you know that people like Sarah want to identify with your pain too. If you're suffering a loss, she can encourage you, or other people can encourage you. There's always hope through Christ. So we just thank you very much for letting us come in your living room and sharing some important biblical truths that Christ is alive and that Christ loves you as well.